What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the 2 Feet on the Ground Gravity Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Chris, and I'm excited that you're choosing to join me here today. Hey folks, today's guest really needs no introduction. Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman is an accomplished writer. If you Google search him, look for him on Amazon, you're going to find a lot of books talking about the psychological and physiological effects of violence on the human body. He's been a professor at West Point Military Academy, and the numbers of people that he's impacted through his books and through public speaking, I honestly can't measure. The great thing about today's podcast, though, is we didn't sit there and talk about the military and first responders a whole bunch. We really talked about things that impact every single human being. When it comes to sleep on the human body, when it comes to some of the things that are challenging our culture today, it's going to relate to absolutely everyone. So I'm excited to get to Colonel Grossman's interview. You're going to enjoy it. But before we do that, as always, we need to talk about our sponsor. The sponsor of the 2 Feet on the Ground Gravity Podcast is Service Peace Warriors. Service Peace Warriors is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to our veterans coming home who unfortunately, because of their experiences, are experiencing PTSD or other war-related injuries. Folks, I don't know if you're aware of this, but statistics say that roughly 24 veterans commit suicide every single day, and that is not okay with me. Service Peace Warriors is looking to be a piece of the solution to this alarming statistic. Service Peace Warriors is dedicated to equipping as many veterans suffering from PTSD with service animals as possible every single year. And they're doing this with absolutely zero cost to the veteran. Service Peace Warriors is really taking it a step further, though. They've opened Maddox Dog Training Academy so that they could raise money through Maddox Dog Training Academy to fund Service Peace Warriors, and also through Maddox Dog Training Academy to put service animals in the hands of first responders, our firefighters, paramedics, and police officers that are experiencing trauma vicariously through the folks that they're serving in our communities. Check them out today, servicepeacewarriors.org. Folks, if you wanted to get on board and support Service Peace Warriors work, it wouldn't cost you a penny. Google search Amazon Smile and you'll figure out how you can link your Amazon account to Service Peace Warriors. And then when you spend money on Amazon, Amazon will send a few pennies to Service Peace Warriors. Please check them out today, folks. They're doing remarkable work. With that, folks, again, I don't think I need to introduce this gentleman anymore. Let's jump over to the interview with Colonel Grossman and figure out how we can make positive impacts in our life today. Good morning, Colonel Grossman. Thanks for joining me here on the Gravity Podcast. How are you, sir?
Hey, Chris. Good morning to you. You know, I've had the honor to do a fair amount of these podcasts. And one of the things I try to do up front is to honor you and honor your listeners for participating in this process. You know, I retired from the Army in 1997. I was on 60 Minutes in 2020. And that was back in the time when they meant a lot more than they mean today. You know, and there was only 3 networks, you know, but they didn't mean anything. A week later, it was yesterday's, you know, there wasn't even a residue like a newspaper column. They were done and nobody cared. And if you're lucky, you get a few minutes that they decided what to use and what to cut. But today with the podcast movement, we have broken through that barrier. This is a time of deeper learning and deeper wisdom. And I honor your listeners for seeking more than a 5-minute soundbite on CNN or Fox News. And I honor you right up front. And I praise God for you and your wife and your wonderful endeavors to bring us deeper knowledge. And certainly with this concept of finding that center ground, you know, that center of gravity. What a worthy endeavor. And so, you know, kind of up front, my little studio here has got, you know, the coins and the weapons and, you know, the armor, but these are all represent protection. Weapons, I've got a thing in non-combat about the giving of a weapon and how all of those are gifts back there, and how it implies your confidence in the receiver and your desire for their safety and to give them the tools that they need. And it all comes back to love. If you've seen one of my presentations, I got these big graffiti markers and I fill up that paper and And the last one is love. John 15:13, greater love is no one than this. They give their life for their friends, but there's many ways to give your life. And so that kind of lays a foundation for the setting. The instruments of war in the Bible talks about the sword of the Spirit and the breastplate of righteousness, and those are tools to save lives, and those are tools to protect people, and it all comes back to love. These are just tools that it's about how you use them and how you apply them, and so that's kind of in a nutshell what's going on back there, and my participation with the podcast. And where would what would you like to see us going with this then? What do you think we should do?
I love you kicking it off that way because that really gets to the heart of Jamie and I and the 2 Feet on the Ground Gravity podcast is how do we sit there and love our neighbors? How do we love people that think differently than us? There's things that are willing to fight over. Yeah. There are things that are worthy to fight over. There's lines in the sand that we all have to draw when it comes to our ethics, when it comes to our morals, when it comes to our character. But there's an awful lot of middle ground that as husbands, as wives, as fathers, as mothers, as human beings that we can have similarity. And yes, I did have had the honor of sitting in your audience. And here's the deal. I was the bookworm. I don't know if I was being the bookworm nerd or not. What it was I think I didn't have my glasses that day. So I sat in the front row. And as you asked an overhead question, I happened to spout out an answer. So you honored me with both the book and with a signature. That's been probably 12 years ago, though. Long time ago. Hey, let's start with that. Again, we live in at least for a lot of folks that are living right now, we live in an unprecedented time. There's a lot of noise and chaos. People are really struggling. What do I believe? You've circled the sun here a few times, and you have a lot of experiences. Being an Air Force veteran myself, the military, great opportunity for folks to experience people from a lot of different backgrounds. And that gives you, I think, a foundation. It gives you perspective in life. What did your military experience give to you to help you establish those foundations and let you know kind of where true north is?
Right. Well, let's start with the foundation of just how desperately bad this situation is, because it's far worse than people know. The thing to understand is the best measure of the problem is the murder rate. Every ag assault, we'll make ag assault say whatever you want it to say. Where do you draw that magic line between aggravated assault and simple assault? But dead is dead. Murder is pretty good data. The only problem is medical technology is holding down the murder rate.
Yes,
the docs are saving ever more lives every year. Now, this is really important. When people compare the murder rate over time without allowing for medical technology, it's like people comparing minimum wage without allowing for inflation. So imagine if somebody said, well, your grandpa made 25 cents an hour. You make $25 an hour. You make 100 times more money than your grandpa did. Look how well you got it. Well, immediately we understand there's a little thing called inflation that we intuitively understand. So when people compare crime between now and the 90s and now in the 60s, they're lying that they don't allow for medical technology. So we have one really good solid data point. In the early 2000s, a UMass Harvard study in the journal Homicide, major study by two major universities between the 1960s and the 1990s. Medical technology had cut the murder rate to a third or a quarter would otherwise be. That is, to compare the murders in the 90s with the 60s, we had to multiply by a factor of 3 or 4, right?
Yeah.
And between the 90s and today, medical technology has exploded. In 20 years of war, the life-saving things that we have learned, tourniquets alone have probably cut the murder rate in half. Cop slaps on a tourniquet, saves a crime victim's life. We prevented a murder. If just 20 to 30 people a day, cops, EMS, citizens like me, I carry a tourniquet everywhere. If just 20 to 30 people a day slap on a tourniquet and save a crime victim's life, we cut the murder rate in half. So I trained the fire and EMS guys in one of our nation's largest cities. They tell me, they said, Dave, I guarantee you, in our city alone, we slap on a tourniquet 20 to 30 times a day and save a crime victim's life. It's much, much worse than it looks. And you got to understand, the FBI giving us the murder data year after year, they're kind of lying, but not allowing for medical technology. If you ask them, say, oh yeah, well, yeah, that's a factor. Well, why don't you back? Well, nobody wants to go there. Nobody wants to say how bad it truly is. So to compare the 60s with today, I think you have to multiply by a factor of at least 6, probably more like 7 or more. So with all that said then, in 2020, the murder rate was up 30%. The highest annual increase we have ever seen was 12% one year in the 1960s. So 2020 was what, like 30% versus 12%, almost 3 times worse than we ever seen. No, 2020 was like 20 times worse than anything we've ever seen. The wheels are coming off the bus. The world is coming unglued, and we don't even know it. And look at, every criminology professor, everybody out there that's telling us a problem, if they don't allow for medical technology, they're lying. You would be offended if somebody tried to tell you, well, you've got it 100 times better than your grandpa did. You make $25 an hour. He made 25 cents. You'd be offended.
I can't buy a hamburger for 10 cents anymore.
And we should be offended when somebody tries to compare the murder rate over any period of time. So understand how desperately bad it is. 2020 is worse than anything we've ever seen. We don't have the data on 2021, but we know it's up. If it stayed the same, it would be bad. But it's worse. It's compound interest. And as of August of last year, we had more cops murdered than all the previous year put together. This war on cops is real. A lady named Heather McDonald wrote a book called War on Cops, and she talked about what's going on out there. So understand, it's desperately bad. I mean, orders of magnitude worse than anything we've ever seen. If you're a cop, if you're an armed citizen, if you ever carried a gun off duty, now's the time to do it. Whatever the threat is to your loved ones. And people say, why do you carry a gun off duty? My answer is, and I'm a reserve cop, I would live the rest of my life in hell if my loved ones were being attacked and I didn't have the life-saving tools of my profession on my body. I mean, all of you got to say, look, if some bad thing happened and I stood there without my gun, I would live the rest of my life in hell. So whatever motivation there was to carry a gun before is 20 times greater today, at least. And so recognize the magnitude of the threat, but there's another angle on this that people just don't want to look at. And this is the key. This drives down to wellness. It drives down to relationships. It drives down to everything we're doing. We're in the middle of a global epidemic of sleep deprivation. It impacts every aspect of our civilization worldwide. So the military research tells us that sleep deprivation is a key factor in suicides. You ever heard that? Suicides? No, I've never heard about that. Well, why not? Do an online search. Just do an online search. Suicide plus sleep deprivation. Boom. Look what comes up. Probably the single best meta-study on suicide, a study of studies, says not only is sleep deprivation a key factor in suicide, it is the most remediable factor. It's something we can do something about right stinking now. It's something we can fix right now. So this global epidemic of sleep deprivation is responsible for a worldwide explosion of suicides. Every nation on the planet has seen the suicide rate explode. So here's the key. Sleep deprivation creates impaired judgment. Sleep-deprived people are not rational. They think with their primitive brain. They go straight to hostility. They go straight to anxiety. They go straight to fear. The forebrain, the rational brain becomes depressed, and the midbrain, the fight or flight survival brain takes over. So when you see anger, when you see hostility, when you see an explosion of violence, the first place we should be looking is this worldwide epidemic of sleep deprivation. 18 hours without sleep and your impaired judgment equal to 0.08 legally drunk.
You're operating drunk.
Yes. Yeah. At 20, and this is impaired judgment. Your hand and eye coordination might be there. You can still walk a straight line, but you can't think straight. It's as though you were drunk. 24 hours without sleep, impaired judgment equal to 0.10 above legally drunk. 2 nights without sleep, and you are psychotic. Any graduate of Army Ranger School will tell me about hallucinations on the third day without sleep. And we're in the middle of this global epidemic of sleep deprivation. So teen suicides have exploded. One of the major killers of our kids, teenagers, 10, 11, 12-year-old, teenage girls' suicide rate has tripled per capita in America in the last decade. If you have kids, if you have teenagers or tweenagers, you should be scared sick about suicide. So here's parenting 101 for the 21st century.
Bring it.
Send your kid to bed at night, take their cell phone away from them. No cell phone in the room, no laptop in the room. They have got to go to the room and sleep. And so during one of my classes, a cop came up. I'm selling books during the breaks. I'm talking to people. The cop came up during the break and he said, I had a good girl. He said she was an A student. She said, Dad, it's embarrassing. You don't have to take my cell phone every night. You can trust me. He said, so I trust her. I let her keep her cell phone. He said, a little while later, she took her life. He said, my little girl took her life. And we never knew the hell she was living in until we looked at the text messages on her cell phone. Night after night of ceaseless, relentless, vicious bullying. And you can't just ignore that stuff. We're not wired that way. He said it was heartrending. You could see her up all night long, night after night, trying to defend herself, trying to find somebody to stand up for her. He said, I understood my little girl was bullied to death. What I didn't understand until now, she was sleep deprived, tormented, and bullied to death in front of my eyes, and I let it happen. He said, I can't ignore that text message in the middle of the night. How can we expect our kids to? He said, the one thing on earth I could have done for my little girl was take her cell phone every night, let her turn off all the bad stuff in this world. So who's going to be your mommy? Who's going to make you get that sleep? The second thing this global epidemic of sleep deprivation has done, and it's binge watching TV shows, it's the incredibly addictive video games, it's social media all night long. And every time somebody likes what you wrote, you get this endorphin ping, The head of Netflix said their number one competitor is not other online providers. Their number one competitor is sleep. The corporate policy of Netflix is to steal your sleep. They don't care that they're killing you. They don't care that they're destroying your life. They don't care that they're taking years off your life and they're sleep depriving you and all the medical problems. They don't care. They just want to sell their product. So the second thing that it's doing is a worldwide explosion of traffic deaths. Now, decade after decade, we brought traffic deaths down, airbags, seatbelts, technology, medical technology. And now for almost a decade, everywhere, traffic deaths are back up. What is the new factor everywhere? This epidemic of sleep deprivation. So once again, I had 3 teenage boys. Now I got teenage grandchildren. My oldest grandson just turned 20 and is off on his career right now. But when I had 3 teenage boys, the number one killer of teenagers was traffic deaths. And that was my number one concern. I made sure they all had cars with airbags, and 2 out of 3 tested those airbags. But nobody ever told me the most important thing I should do is make sure they have a good night's sleep. Oh, what did we do? Oh, you got to go to bed on time. But on Friday night, on Saturday night, stay up as late as you want. They had their friends over, they'd be gaming all night long. And what do? They get in the car and go to breakfast after the night all night long. And it was the most stupid, dangerous thing could possibly, if I didn't know, now we know. And so global epidemic of sleep deprivation, the video game industry is not going to tell you. Netflix are not going to tell you. The LinkedIn and Facebook is not going to say, you've been on Facebook for the last 36 hours straight. You need to get some sleep. The video game is never going to say, you've been online for 36 hours straight. They're not going to tell you that. My dad started smoking in 1940 when he was 5 years old. He
Holy
put a
smokes.
nickel on the counter, bought a pack of tobacco, rolling paper, and started smoking. Hey, candy rot, you all know that, right? It's true. Candy rots your teeth. Cigarettes are good for you. It's his money. You're right. It's his money. Let him buy cigarettes. Sure. And they believe the tobacco industry fought decade after decade over one thing: to keep selling tobacco to children. The whole battle of tobacco is over one thing: stop selling this stuff to children and admit that it does harm. And so it's the same way with the video games, with binge watching shows, with social media. They just want to sell their product, like selling tobacco to my dad when he was 5 years old. They don't care. They just want to sell their product. They want your kid to have a cell phone. Does your kid really need a cell phone? They will never tell you that the billions of kids on the planet don't need cell phones. They want to sell a cell phone to your kid when they're 3 years old, and they don't care what a negative impact it has. And so the third major cause of death that has exploded is opiate overdoses. Now think about it. Why opiates? Prescription opiates have always been there. Why are opiates suddenly the drug of choice? Well, sleep deprivation creates chronic pain. Doc, I heard all the time, give me a pill to fix. You don't need a pill. You need more sleep. And you got to knock off the caffeine after lunch that's stopping you from getting deep cycle sleep. Lack of sleep and bad quality sleep creates chronic pain. Well, why? Why are opiates suddenly the drug of choice worldwide? What is the new factor? And it's this explosion of sleep deprivation. And they'll never tell you that. They'll never connect the dots for you. So I believe with all my heart, the new factor, eating away at the very fabric of our civilization, is sleep deprivation. And I bet you, if you and your wife have stayed rational, have had friends on the left and the right, have had friends who were Christians and non-Christians, if you were the kind of people who could do that, I will bet you that naturally, intuitively, you have good sleep discipline in your family. You cannot.
We have to.
Yeah, you cannot maintain that rational dynamic that you have maintained without having good sleep discipline. So you talk about this whole dynamic, and you kind of go down to wellness as kind of the focus of your podcast. And I tell you, wellness is where it's at. We are sick. Our society is sick. Crime has exploded. People just aggression and anger and hostility has exploded. And it comes back to wellness. And the foundation of wellness is food and sleep. Air, water, food, sleep. Those are the four things we need to survive. If one of those things is missing, then the organism is deeply and profoundly harmed. The four legs of our table are air, water, food, and sleep. Those are the things we need. And if we don't get those things, then the organism is deeply, profoundly harmed. So the next thing to talk about is sleep hygiene and what we can do to sleep well and sleep appropriately. But does all this make sense? Does this tie in with
completely, Colonel Grossman. Here's the deal. Like I was a child crime detective for a couple of years, and between that and me not setting good boundaries in life, saying yes to everyone, I ended up experiencing an anxiety disorder that led to depression. And what was at the forefront of my doctor and my counselor helping me get healthy? It was good sleep hygiene. That was one of the very first things they established. And so we bought blackout blinds. We got some lavender lotion. I got into, like you just said, sleep hygiene, meaning I had a routine every night, from bathing to bed, eliminating the blue light, the electronic things, getting a book. I saw this play out in my life back then, and it's been something that my wife and I have seen continue to play out, because obviously sometimes my job requires me to get less sleep. Thankfully, if I have the foundation of great sleep, I can handle a night or two. In fact, I remember you talking about the use of caffeine, saying, hey, caffeine's not bad. Caffeine isn't bad. If we use it effectively when we need it, it's great. But if we sit there and drink 20 cups every single day, when you do need caffeine to get you through a call out in the middle of the night or something like that, it's not going to work. So I love any listener can do this. Any listener, you don't even have to spend the money on blackout blinds. Any listener can get tinfoil in a cardboard box, wrap that puppy up, throw it up in your window, have a blacked out room, have a cool room. I've just touched on my experience. Go deeper on this, Colonel, just in reference to what you've seen with great sleep hygiene and how people can set this up.
Well, a couple of things. I've got kind of a series that I go through with people, and I tell them that naps can be our friend. Naps don't replace a night's sleep, but you need to get naps when you can, and they need to be quality sleep. But don't rely just on naps. If you know you're going to get a good night's sleep, don't let a nap get in the way. For me, anything other than a 30-minute nap really gets in the way of a good night's sleep. And I know, but here's the key. The nap has got to be at least 30 minutes. You hear a lot about 20-minute power naps, but there's usually 5 minutes to wind down and 5 minutes to wind up. And you really should aim for a 30-minute nap. And so what that means is, we've all been there, driving on the road, head is bobbing. They taking the little micro naps. We've all had the little micro naps. Your head is bobbing. Pull over, take a 10-minute nap. It's like a surge of caffeine. It's a startle response. Take a 30-minute nap. The alarm goes off, and you're bleary and you're groggy. You don't want to get up. You know why? Because you're asleep. It takes 30 minutes, fall solid sound, deep cycle. I don't want to get back up again asleep. So that means the snooze alarm is not our friend. The snooze alarm is always set for 10 minutes, and that's just enough time to get that startle response. The snooze alarm is an evil little button that makes you relive the worst part of every day over and over again. And I tell everybody, one thing you do right now, never touch that snooze alarm again. Get a 10-minute snooze, another snooze, a third snooze. You just threw away 30 minutes of your life. You and anybody in the room with you, those 3 snoozes, threw away 30 minutes of the day. Those 3 snoozes, no matter as far as sleep goes, so no matter as far as your life goes. You threw away 30 minutes of the day to trick your body and go without sleep. I will teach you a trick that'll put 30 minutes of quality sleep back in every day. That adds up to 3.5 hours sleep back in every week, 2 pure, beautiful nights sleep back in every month, 24 nights sleep back in every year. Very simple. Set the alarm a half hour later and get the heck out of bed. And if it's that stinking hard to get out of bed, what's your body trying to tell you? You need more sleep. Tell your body, we got to get up, but I promise I'll get to bed early tonight. And one of the things to understand is do an online search for the snooze button. And you're doing actual physical, psychological harm to your body with the snooze button. It's like you're trying to force your body to fall into deep cycle sleep in 10 minutes, and it can't do it. One of the worst forms of torture on the planet is sleep deprivation. And the snooze alarm is an instrument of torture. So maybe at the heart of it is self-discipline, grit, determination. Have you got what it takes to take a bullet and drive on? Are you in charge of your body, or is your body in charge of you? It's the first thing you do every morning is surrender to your body and hit the snooze alarm. Or it's the first thing you do every morning is take charge of your life and roll out of bed. Give a kid a marshmallow. You need this marshmallow right now, but I'll be back in 5 minutes with another one. You don't eat it. You need them both. And that is the single greatest predictor of success in life. More than IQ, you can't change your IQ. You can't change your kid's IQ, not much. But you can change your self-discipline starting tonight. So set your cell phone for like 10 alarms. 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock. And by the time you turn them all off, you're up. And the you that goes to bed at night has got to make the you that get up in the morning get the heck out of bed. All right, now the next is dark. And as you mentioned, the dark is our friend. And I really recommend those blackout curtains, but I don't care how good you do it, unless you spray paint. And I teach fire departments nationwide, and they always have somebody they call the dark Nazi. And this is the guy in the bunk room that spray paints the windows with black paint from the inside. I tell them, guys, the dark Nazi is right. You need to sleep in a totally dark room. There's a reason for that. And I'm a huge science geek. My favorite website is sciencedaily.com. Check it every day through every category. But major study in the sleep lab, totally dark room, bathroom light is on and the door is shut. The light coming under the crack of the bathroom door is enough light to stop the body from producing the melatonin that you need. Now, melatonin is a neurotransmitter that the body creates to help us sleep. It's created in the dark. You know, I used to say in my classes, babies are sloshing with melatonin. Babies can sleep anywhere. As we get older and older, the body produces less and less melatonin. It's true. But recent research said that your baby playing on the cell phone, watching TV an hour or two before bed is having a terrible, harmful impact on your baby's sleep. Even as babies, it's important that we turn off that blue light, that we turn off that cell phone, that we even with babies who can sleep anywhere. It's important. With adults, it's much more so. And by the time your kids become teenagers, teach your children to sleep in the dark. It's one of the best little survival tools you can give your kids. You know, just teach them to sleep in the dark over a period of time. Slowly reduce that night light. You know, so the key is make the room as dark as you can and combine it with the sleep mask. And my favorite sleep mask is my grandson went off to college. I gave him, he's heard my class many times. I gave him 2 different sleep masks, you know, the 2 top-rated ones on Amazon. But one of them, the top-rated sleep mask, has got 57,000 reviews. The Bible doesn't have 57,000 reviews. No, the most I've got, you know, 2,500 reviews. 57,000 reviews on a sleep mask. And that gives you some insight into just how important this sleep mask is. So get a sleep mask and make it part of your routine. And your body knows, oh, that mask is on. Time to sleep. People say, oh, well, that mask makes my face sweat. Because the cool is our friend. Put that temperature down. This is a sign we're supposed to sleep in the dark and sleep in a cool room. Bring that temperature down. Get an extra layer of blankets and bring that temperature down. So the dark is our friend and cool is our friend. Alcohol is not our friend. Nothing wrong with a nightcap. 1 drink on the way to bed, but the research is clear. Anything more than 1 alcoholic drink on the way to bed is having a very bad impact on your sleep. Now, the one thing I recommend to everybody is to get a fitness tracker and to track their sleep. That fitness tracker will rock your world. And again, the science geek, right? All the studies, a major study on which of the fitness tracker is doing the best job at tracking sleep, and the Fitbit. And the Ring, the Aura. The Aura was the other one, the Ring. The Air Force has started using those rings with their pilots to track their sleep. But I like it on the wrist and that Fitbit. You download the app on your cell phone, you wear that fitness tracker. It'll track your steps. It'll track your heart rate throughout the day. It will track your sleep. And that's important. So manage your sleep like you manage your money. You know, 24 hours without sleep, you're impaired judgment, but you do the same thing by getting 4 hours of sleep night after night. As adults, we need 7 hours of sleep. We say, well, as we get older, we need less sleep. No, as we get older, it's hard to get sleep, but it's still critically important. As adults, we need 7 hours of sleep. The elderly that are getting 5 hours of sleep, 4 hours of sleep, they've got a problem, and they need to confront that, and they need to get help. We all need a little help with sleep sometimes, but don't do it with alcohol. No more than 1 drink on the way to bed. But wear your do your own experiment. Wear your fitness tracker, pound down 4 beers and go to bed, and see what it does to your sleep.
It says you have a horrible night's sleep.
Yeah, you'll fall quickly into a shallow sleep. You wake up in an hour or so and can't get back to sleep. That's what alcohol's doing for you. So nicotine's not our friend. Don't get up the night and have a smoke. This one time show some discipline. Caffeine is our friend if we use it effectively. So we've been at war for 21 years now. We're still in Iraq. And for the first 15 years, the U.S. Armed Forces passed out those energy drinks like water. They gave them us, we gave them the troops, aren't we nice guys? And then about 6 or 7 years ago, there were 2 major Department of Defense-wide studies on the energy drinks. Today, for all practical purposes, there is a complete ban on issuing energy drinks. They're like cigarettes. You want to buy your own, you're an adult, not going to stop you. We'll never buy it for you. In an academic environment, the troops taking the most energy drinks were the ones with the worst grades. It destroyed their grades. In a tactical environment, the one taking the most energy drinks were the ones most likely to nod off on the job. All there is in that energy drink is a mega dose of caffeine and sugar and some stuff that will make you metabolize it quickly. It will give you a 1 hour burst of physical ability and then you crash. The second one feels good for 10 minutes. The third one feels good for 5 minutes, but all you're doing is building up your tolerance of caffeine and you're wasted. So one energy drink before a PT test. One energy drink, not 2 times a week I go for my max push, so I use the energy drink. No, 1 time a month at most. Before a PT test, before an athletic event, one energy drink, but be prepared, you're going to crash afterwards, and be prepared for that. So the caffeine is got a half-life of about 5 hours. That means the caffeine you took at 5 p.m. is still at half strength when you go to bed at 10 p.m. And it's making us have bad quality sleep. People say, oh, well, caffeine doesn't bother my sleep. Then why are you taking it? But caffeine doesn't make us not sleep. Caffeine makes it easier to stay awake and harder to have quality sleep. Guard your sleep, protect your sleep. Sleep is that little vacation that waits at the end of every day.
Yes.
And caffeine is the enemy of good sleep. So shut off caffeine shortly after lunch. That's where we're seeing this chronic pain, is the caffeine, these mega doses of caffeine, and you're not getting that deep cycle sleep that your body needs for the tendons and muscle to fully relax. One last thing on sleep deprivation too. The research keeps stacking up that sleep deprivation is a critical factor in Alzheimer's and dementia. That just scared the hell out of all of us. I got to sleep when you're dead. Well, have 10 years of Alzheimer's first. That's just scared the daylights out of all of us. This sleep deprivation, and doing another online search, sleep deprivation and dementia, sleep deprivation and Alzheimer's, boom, look at the research. It's through the roof. And a major study, remember that deep cycle sleep is what the caffeine's stopping you from getting. Major study just a few years back said lack of deep cycle sleep may be the single greatest predictor of Alzheimer's. So when we look at our whole wellness dynamic, we got these evil industries like the tobacco industry selling tobacco to my dad when he was 5 years old. The video game industry, the television industry, and in my book, Assassination Generation, I talk about how the video game industry fought all the way to the Supreme Court to sell any game to any kid at any age. They want the information in this book to go away, but they fought all the way to the Supreme Court to sell any book to any kid at any age. And this is evil. It's a definition of evil, like selling tobacco to my dad when he was 5 years old. But they say, your 5-year-old needs a cell phone. You should get him a cell phone. You're a bad parent if you don't get your 5-year-old a cell phone. Why are they saying that? Because they want to make money and they don't care that they're destroying our civilization. So when you talk about wellness, when you talk about interaction, when you talk about hostility and aggression, this one dynamic is irrefutable, overwhelming, and it is something we can do something about right now. If we give a dang about our health, if we give a dang about our kids, if we cared about our civilization, this is an area we'd be screaming from the mountainside about. So that's kind of the whole wellness issue as far as Grossman goes. Does it make sense? Does
it? Oh, completely. And what I love about this is the fact that this doesn't just apply to veterans, to first responders. This applies to all of us. This is a pandemic that's happening to all of us. And I think when we look at the numbers in reference to our youth that are experiencing depression and anxiety disorders, I mean, I'm talking to educators and principals, it's through the roof. And why? And there's a bunch of factors. I mean, you look at both the violence inoculation that we're giving our kids. You look at sleep deprivation. You look at those dopamine hits that our kids are getting. I heard, I think it was Simon Sinek made the comment of giving our kids free access to their cell phones without any type of boundaries is like throwing open the liquor cabinet and telling them, I know this is a tough time, try the vodka, it'll get you through it.
Who said that? Who was that?
That's Simon Sinek. And I want to say it's one of his talks on the infinite game versus the finite game. Really, really powerful imagery and making us realize the the actual effects, both physiological and psychological, that are happening. Can we transition to another study that I know you're really versed in? I love your book on combat. I love what it's done for our military active duty, even our veterans, our first responders. I think a lot of your principles in on combat also relate to everybody on the street, to all citizens. And the fact that, you talk about the physiological effects of violence and being in a lethal force encounter. I know that folks, when they are having an amygdala hijacking, and that inner brain is just taken over, I feel like some of the discipline, some of the skills that you teach in on combat are things that any citizen could use in order to get that frontal lobe reactivated and making great decisions. What can you unpack that a little bit?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because with the pandemic, the book on combat has become like an Amazon #1 bestseller in all these medical fields. I did a podcast for all of New York City's ER docs. That was before the pandemic. I did a podcast during the pandemic for all of England's ER docs. And these docs and these nurses and all these people in the middle of a pandemic dealing with the stress, they found out that, hey, it works in combat. It also works for me facing the stress of life and death situations in a pandemic every day. But let me give you one example on this. And there's a biological roller coaster that you go on during a stressful event. And you got sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight. Then you got parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and digest, also called feed and breathe. So we got the 4 F's: fight or flight, feed and breathe, the 4 F's, right? So when you have this life and death event, and when the danger is over, you crash, and there's a parasympathetic backlash. And a lot of people gorge themselves, and a lot of people have really intense sex. I'm talking about victims of violent crime that go home and both partners are very invested. And it's really kind of a beautiful grasping for life in the face of death. It's a reassurance. Frank Herbert called it the universal drive for immortality through progeny in the face of death, And it happens to fire and EMS, and it happens to cops. And I tell my cops, humor makes it set in and also guards them against it, right? So I tell them, if it happens to you, there's nothing wrong if it doesn't happen, nothing wrong if it does happen, but don't be troubled by it. Be forewarned and forearmed. Not a lot of perks come with this job. Relax and enjoy it. And then that's it. Off duty. Wait until you're off duty. It's amazing how many first responders get in trouble every year for having sex on the job. And if they are forewarned about this biological dynamic, they don't want blindside them. So I did a class for all of the U.S. Army's sexual harassment investigators and sexual harassment counselors. All of them. I mean, talking like worldwide, piped in simultaneously. And I told them about this biological roller coaster. And we're cops, military, but everybody, we know we've got to restrain our violence. We're not going to pick a steak knife up and stab somebody. We're not going to pull our gun out. We understand that. And we know things that trigger violence, and we know that we mustn't let those things get out of hand. Well, the same thing is true with sexual activity. The same restraints we would have on physical violence, we have to have on sexual dynamics. And if we're warned about these things, then they won't blindside us. And the U.S. Army's sexual assault investigators and the sexual assault, they were just counselors. They were just embracing that. And I told them, after an incident, somebody who's been assaulted may seek this reaffirmation, may seek this assurance. It looks like promiscuity, but you understand what it might actually be and be able to look at the big picture. And we're forewarned and forearmed about all of that. So just to give you an idea of the fight that we're in here, my presentation on that, they took a clip of it, and they left out about fire and EMS. They left out about crime victims. They left out about the fact that it terrifies people. They left out, sympathetic and parasympathetic. They just got a little clip of me saying, cop gets a life and death event, cuffs them and stuffs them, get home that night and have some incredible sex, not a lot of perks with this job, relax and enjoy it. And boom, they cut it off. And they use that clip out of context to try to destroy me. They said, look at what this evil guy is teaching everybody, and you know what's really evil about that is not they're trying to hurt me, but the people will have that natural response and think there's something wrong with them. So in my book on combat, we talk about that. And again, that Frank Herbert quote is there. But I was there after the Jonesboro school massacre. 13 little girls and 2 teachers were gunned down. And we were doing critical incident stress briefings. All the teachers, and then we turned around and the teachers did in their classrooms with the students. And my sergeant major at the time for my military unit had been a drill sergeant for a female basic training. Obviously there's lots of female drill sergeants, but a couple of male drill sergeants, he was one of them. And he said, sir, after a stressful event, very often girls' period will stop. After what just happened to these girls, there's a real possibility that their period will stop. And they might think that they're pregnant, and that would just amplify the stress of this terrible event. Wow. So it was so easy to deal with that. When their PE teacher, the girls' PE teacher, was cued to tell them, after a stressful event, the female body will sometimes stop their period. If that happened to you, it does not necessarily mean you're pregnant. Come talk with me. And so we were able to shortstop this biological dynamic for these innocent children, these little girls who had been victims of such violence, who'd had their friends murdered, who had their friends in the hospital. That's enough stress without their body blindsiding them with something. But when they were forewarned about it, then it was no big deal. And I talk about that on combat, So this whole dynamic of applying this understanding of what the body does under stress, I think you're absolutely correct. I think it goes far beyond just those in combat, far beyond medical personnel in the pandemic. It really is a set of life lessons. And maybe the most important lesson is the breathing exercise. I've got emails that come in and I've got letters and organized by topic. And of all the topics, the breathing exercise is by far the biggest. Saved the most lives, had the most impact. Now, we know that even better than breathing is taking a big swig of water.
Okay.
That big swig of water sends a message that says we're safe. It's a parasympathetic rest and digest message. So when somebody's stressed out, taking a swig of water is one of the most valuable things they could possibly do. I was on a podcast with an Australian EMS guy, and he said, I heard about that. And I said, mate, drink that bottle of water, drink it all. And the guy did, and he fully recovered. He was no longer stressed out or wiped out. It's just one of these little fundamental tool. And we see it, give him a glass of water. Here, have a swig of brandy. Here, give him a glass of the act of swallowing. I tell people, a deer's being chased by a wolf. You stop and get a drink, he's really thirsty. I can't get a drink, I'm being chased by a wolf. The fact that you stop and take a drink sends this message, the act of swallowing, something hitting the stomach. Those are all dynamics that take you from fight or flight to rest and digest. And so, we have people going to debriefings. And we tell them, have a bottle of water in front of everybody. As everybody talks about what happened, as soon as they start become emotional, stop, take a swig of water. You see, re-experiencing the event is not PTSD, it's normal. When you re-experience the event and go on that roller coaster ride and you try to not think about it, you will literally drive yourself crazy. You will send yourself down the path of PTSD trying to not think about it, because every time you think about it, you go on that roller coaster ride. Well, now you can't not think about something. What you got to do is you got to make peace with the memory. And what we've always done is we did debriefings one-on-one, but now we've added the water. And somebody talks about it and they get emotional, take a swig of water. So a friend of mine is one of our nation's leading therapists and counselors for federal agents. And she told me, how she'd use that bottle of water and she'll debrief the federal agent. And she told me, she said, 6 years of college, 14 years of practice, and that stupid bottle of water is doing more good than anything I've ever done. So, I tell my cops, you're getting a witness statement from a victim of a crime. If that individual becomes emotional, A, you don't need all that drama. B, you send them down the path of mental illness. They're starting to associate the memory with the emotions. But put a bottle of water in front of them. Just the power of a gift. Put a bottle of water, crack the seal in front of them, hand them a bottle of water, and every time they start to become emotional, they come take a big swig of water. A, you're getting the calm, rational statement that you need from that victim of crime. But B, you're also sending them down the path of mental wellness.
Wow.
And so, but the breathing, you don't always have water. You can always stop and breathe. And the breathing exercise is a major tool that we talk about it. There's a couple of tricks to this whole, well, how hard is it to breathe? Anybody will tell you, calm down, take a deep breath. Mama knew what she was talking about. But a couple of things. One of the things we want to do is when you breathe, completely relax the stomach. Let that Twinkie tumor hang out there, children right up to 5 years old all have that adorable little pot belly. And right around 5, we all learned the Superman pose. And that's not good.
Suck that in.
We don't know how to breathe. We'll see photographs of some primitive tribesmen. They're all standing there in their little loincloths with their bellies hanging out. Ha, ha, ha. No, they're not wrong. We're wrong. We didn't even know how to breathe. We got the Superman pose. And so what we want is horizontal breathing. You breathe in, the belly expands. You breathe out, the belly contracts. And that's healthy breathing. And when we do the breathing, I think counting is part of the process. My dog can count 1, 2, a whole bunch. That's all. But when you count in through the nose, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out through the lips, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. The process of counting combined with the breathing and those deep belly breaths are incredibly calming. And I've got a guy who said, he and his wife had listened to the audio book, my book on combat. And, they'd heard me go through it in the audio book, and his wife is in a medical emergency. She's got a tube down her throat, a truly life and death situation. And she's gagging and losing it. And she scrawls on a piece of paper to her husband, tube down the throat, can't talk. Grossman, breathing. He said, I knew exactly what she meant. I'm going to coach her. In through the nose, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. He said, I'll show you the email. He said, I have absolutely no doubt it saved my wife's life. Another guy sent me an email. He said, a lot of them just something like, don't let people tell you that combat breathing doesn't work. You can hear me doing it on the radio. But it's the ones outside of combat that are really interesting. One guy said he'd been to Iraq and Afghanistan, had some baggage. He was working his way through. He and some friends were mountain climbing. And he's spending the night on top of a glacier, an icy glacier. He said, I get up in the middle of the night, completely disoriented. And I'm wandering around on this slick glacier without traction devices. And I heard your voice. Breathe. In through the nose, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Out through the lips, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. He said, I regained control. And again, I'll show you the email. He said, I was literally one step away from stepping off a cliff and dying. So, those are applications of the breathing other than life and death tactical situations. These are fundamental tools we give everybody. And there's a trick they use to teach it to little children. Now, what the doc does, the doc takes a scented flower and lights a candle. With my grandchildren, I just walked out and plucked a flower and I light a candle and I model the behavior. Smell in the flower, enjoy it, blow out the candle, watch the smoke. Now you do it. That fast, got a 3-year-old breathing on command. And it really does work. So these
Oh, it
are
does.
all applications of on combat to children, to medical
Yes.
emergencies, to that moment of disorientation on the side of a mountain. These are broader applications. This biological backlash of intense sex after an incident. Well, if there's not an appropriate partner, you won't be blindsided by it. If it's not an appropriate time, you won't be blindsided. But if it does happen, you recognize it as natural and it's okay. It's so important for people to be forewarned and forearmed about that stuff. And you're so right. I'm glad. I appreciate your kind words about on combat, and we've certainly been able to touch an awful lot of lives and push the envelope, and in a wide variety of different environments. So thanks for asking about that. Thanks for
And
giving that up. It's really
and
amazing.
lives that you won't ever know, Colonel, because here's the deal. When I worked at one of our local high schools, I would have students experience anxiety attacks. If we want to bring this conversation full circle, let's talk about everything we talked about at the beginning with sleep deprivation and depression and anxiety with our youth. And now I have this student in front of me who's having an anxiety attack, and I sit there and start working them through combat breathing, doing exactly the same thing you just did. I'd never heard the flower in the candle. I don't remember that analogy. So I'm just counting for them, and I'm watching their tunnel vision start to open back up. Yeah. I'm watching their body sit there and start to relax. It's something I've talked to my kids through. The funny thing is with the students, they listen to me. With my daughters, sometimes I've been, hey, you're not breathing right now. Let me talk you through this. I am breathing, Dad. Sweetheart, you're not breathing right now. It's okay. Dad does the same thing sometimes. Let me talk you through this. It's so cool. So yeah, your writings and I say specifically your writings, I realize that isn't just yours, combat breathing. I know there's a lot of folks that have talked about it, but when it comes to the sheepdog community, when it comes to warriors, when it comes to defenders, when it comes to our military, our veterans, our first responders, a lot of them are aware of your work and the way you've packaged it to where it connects with us. And then we've gone out there and used it for so many other people that is just going to be immeasurable. Absolutely love it.
In my book, on spiritual combat, we talk about how important it is to take all the good things and give them to God. All honor and glory to God. And if we seek glory for ourselves, that's empty and hollow. It's a hole that will never be filled. Yeah. But if we give the honor and glory to God, then He gives us love and joy and peace. And that's a beautiful thing. So thank you for your kind words. And I really do give the honor to God. And we give the honor and glory to God, and He gives us love, joy, and peace. It's a true love and perfect peace and amazing joy. Any of your listeners out there, one foundation on which we can, without a doubt, build our wellness is faith. Faith is such a vital component to wellness. It sustains us. It's one of the pillars of resiliency around the world is faith. And if all your listeners out there, you and I are men of faith, and people know. I know on combat. I know on killing. Well, what's this book about? Well, read it and see what it's all about. And get a feel for the next step. And then the Bulletproof Marriage. My co-author Adam Davis gets all the credit for this book. It's really an amazing book, but it's 90-day devotional. I recently trained a military unit, and one of the first sergeants came up, and even if we're old lieutenant colonel, the first sergeant's kind of a scary guy. First sergeant walks up, he throws a copy of the book down in front of me, says, "Sir, I hold you personally responsible for all the arguments my wife and I had over this book." He said, "Now I go to Amazon and buy them 5 at a time, give them all my married troops." So all of this, I think when we take it the next step, when we take it to its most important level, I think we got to realize what a fundamental component faith is in our wellness, and how this book was actually written as a companion to On Combat. It stands by itself, but it also says, look at this chapter on combat, because while the physical things are happening, there's also spiritual things happening. So it can stand by itself pretty well, but it also ties in with On Combat, where we're taking On Combat and turning it into spiritual warfare. So you may not ever see combat, but you are certainly involved in spiritual warfare, and the things in there can cross apply to here. So, what you said about on combat, it really evolved into this book, which stands on its own, but also works well in conjunction with on combat. And
I
and
like
that
it.
gets back to wellness as being such a vital component in our faith and in our belief structure to carry us through some of these terrible, tragic times.
Yeah. Hey, if people want to learn more about your work, I know you have a number of websites, killology.com. Is that maybe Dave Grossman Academy is maybe another
It's
website?
just grossmanacademy.com. grossmanacademy.com, just pretty straightforward. And that's some online classes. You can get an e-copy of the book, work all the way through the class. We've really had some great success with that. My Killology website, we're in the process of rebranding ourselves. We're just on the early stages. We need to update that website, but we'll have a trailer there to move to wherever. But yeah, killology.com. I coined the word killology, and the defund the police people and the people attacking our cops nationwide right now. Doesn't matter what you do, they will attack you. You can't appease them. You can't make them happy.
Yeah.
That we with this killology.com, criminology is not about teaching people to be criminals. Killology is not about teaching people to kill. It's about understanding the factors that enable and restrain killing in society. But we're really kind of rebrand and move away from that a little bit. But right now, the killology.com website's a nice place to go. But also, just go to Amazon and look at the books we mentioned here. On Killing, my first book, sold 500,000 copies worldwide. Google Scholar said been cited over 3,000 times in scholarly works. On Combat, as you so kindly mentioned, go to Amazon, take a look at that. 5 stars. 5 stars on Amazon is like a 4.0 GPA. 1B.
I don't think Santa Claus has 5 stars.
That's right. That's right. And 5 stars on Amazon with 1,500 reviews, and that's pretty cool. And we recommend, I think, it both. Understanding what's happening to the kids and this industry selling this stuff to our kids, assassination generation, and of course the spiritual side of the house on spiritual combat. Just really more than the website. I'm kind of old-fashioned guy. It's all in the book. I do my own reading on the audiobooks, and they've been well received. I got pretty good at it after the first one, but if you're an audiobook person, we recommend that. And it just so happens that On Killing is on sale, the Kindle edition right now. I put it on my LinkedIn page. Probably one of the best ways to stay in touch with me is just to check my LinkedIn page periodically, and I try to keep everybody current on what's going on in there. Some of the attacks, a bunch of just about any way you measure it, because I've done it so long and so much. I'm probably America's #1 law enforcement trainer, and as such, I've been the #1 target for the
yes, you have
these people. Yeah, and as an article, dig back through my articles on LinkedIn, and I posted some of the emails we got. The kind, tolerant, accepting left. The most vicious, sick, depraved emails that they've given to us. Here's what these guys represent. Here's what they're trying to do, and they do not have our best wishes. They're trying to destroy our civilization. You can't make them happy. But I one guy out there, they attacked the whole sheepdog thing. Oh, we're all sheep, and and you're the dog. Well, it's just a metaphor, and people like dogs. We're Americans. We like dogs. People get more upset when a canine when a canine dog is killed than when a cop is killed. That's kind of twisted, but we feel that way about dogs. And but there's one guy out there, as law enforcement trainer, said, "Well, I'm the shepherd. We're the shepherds. See, we're going to protect our flock." Well, that's it's there's even in the Bible. It's biblical, but the shepherd decides who's mutton and who's lamb chops. The shepherd decides when you're born and when you die. The shepherd shears you once a year. I know who my shepherd is. And I'm under the authority of the great shepherd. And maybe a nice way to wrap this up spiritually. Being God's dog, being a member of God's family, and we are. We will be embraced as children. I have trouble with that. I can barely handle being God's faithful dog. And my dog, this beautiful chocolate lab, and her function in life is find chocolate anywhere in the world and immediately eat it, and lab test it. If she's off the leash, she'll run to the neighbor's yard. rolling something stinky, but I still love her. And God knows all of my failures, and he still loves me, But here's kind of the point of it all. Now, Will Rogers said, if you get to thinking you're a man of some importance, try telling another man's dog what to do. So I tell everybody, when the evil one comes to you, look him in the eye and say, hey, I'm not your dog. I'm just a simple sheepdog. I don't know much. I know one thing. I'm not your dog, dude. I belong to the great shepherd. And one day the sheepdog will finally rest at the feet of the great shepherd. And we're yearning to hear those words. Well done, thou good and faithful servant. And certainly what you and your wife are doing is pretty amazing. And I give you a hearty well done, brother. And I'm honored to have been here on your podcast and have a chance to talk to your audiences and seek that deeper level of knowledge. But it all comes back to love. Why will people walk out the door and die? The mama critter will die for her babies, but she won't die for somebody else's babies. What manner of love is it that these first responders will walk out the door and die for people they've never even met? And greater love is known than this. They give their life for their friends, but sometimes the greatest love is not to sacrifice your life, but to live a life of sacrifice. And so for all of those out there living that life of sacrifice, for all of those putting their life on the line every day for strangers, we wish the mightiest blessing and the mightiest thanks upon them. And they are truly the best our nation has to give. And they're under fierce and vicious attack right now. And they need our help. And you and your wonderful bride are putting together a resource for them. And I'm proud to have been a part of that. And I thank you for giving me the chance to be on board today.
Well, Colonel Grossman, thank you for your time. Thank you for your encouragement, not just for that veteran and active duty and first responder community, but again, education is power, and you've given us an awful lot today. So thank you, brother, and God bless you.
God bless you, my brother. Stay safe, stay hard.
All right, you as well. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what did you think of Colonel Grossman's perspectives? Boy, I hope they're helping you as you reestablish your foundations, continuing to go in the direction that you are called to in life. Folks, Jamie and I would like to hear feedback from you. There's lots of different ways you can do this. First and foremost, if you're consuming this on an Apple Podcast platform, you can go down to the main page of 2 Feet on the Ground, and there are 5 stars. Please consider giving us a 5-star rating. It will increase our our visibility on that platform. There's other ways you can communicate with us, like us, share us on other platforms, share it with a friend if this is helping you gain perspective. You can also shoot us an email at chris@gravityct.com. Let us know what you think. Let us know ideas for future guests or Marriage Monday topics. Folks, we only get to live this life once. Go and love on your family and friends. Take care. God bless.